This special rewind episode featuring the Queen of House Concerts, Shannon Curtis, is powered by liner notes. Learn from the hundreds of musicians and industry pros I've spoken with for the Unstarving Musician on topics such as marketing, songwriting, touring, sync licensing, and much more. Sign up for liner notes. It's an email newsletter from yours truly in which I share some of the best knowledge gems garnered from the many conversations featured on the Unstarving Musician. You'll also be privy to the latest podcast episodes and liner notes subscriber exclusives. Sign up at unstarvingmusician.com. It's free and you can unsubscribe at any time. Welcome to the Unstarving Musician. I'm Rabonzo. This is my podcast. On the podcast, I speak to independent musicians and industry professionals about things like marketing, songwriting, the creative process, touring, recording, and more, so that you and I can do more of what we love, make music. Man, that was good. That's live. That was live. Thank you for tuning in, so to speak. Everything good in your world? You on pins and needles over the U.S. midterm elections? I've never been so interested in the midterms, but man, I know I sound like your dad, or his dad, but the world is going to hell in a handbasket. It seems we're in a place where the best we can do is stave off the incompetence, only to end up with slightly less incompetence running things. So I'm taking a little time off for the Thanksgiving holiday, so there will be no episode that week, and then I'll do it again at the end of the year, just giving you a heads up. A couple of weeks at the end of the year for the Christmas, New Year's holidays, returning with new episodes on January 6th, but there will be some episodes, a couple of episodes in December, so stay tuned for that. One of my older brothers is coming to Querétaro for a visit soon, can't wait. Then we're traveling, the wife and I are traveling to Dallas, Fort Worth, and Nashville to see friends and more family. That'll be fun. I'm getting a flu shot while I'm there. Maybe a booster vaccine. Yep. Not dead yet. Haven't heard Uncle Bill's voice in my head yet. But I know I'm gonna die. Hell, I'm dying right now. We all are, right? Did you know that you can support this podcast by making a small donation or by buying one of the Unstarving Musician recommended resources or by signing up for my liner notes newsletter? There are all kinds of ways you can support what I do here. Just go to unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor to learn about the many ways. And you know what? If you can't afford to give a couple bucks to us, make a purchase, or even bother going to our crowd sponsor page, just tell a friend about the podcast. That too would be amazing. This episode is part of the Unstarving Musician Rewind series where I showcase past interviews. And this one's with singer-songwriter and Queen of House Concerts, Shannon Curtis. She's the featured artist in this episode. I have re-edited and remastered the episode for your listening pleasure. In the beginning, I wasn't so into editing, so this is a much improved recording, a much improved listening experience, I'm quite certain. This conversation is so good. We talk about Shannon's journey into house concert tours, how they upped her game in terms of building connection and community with her supporters, her book on house concerts, her then latest album, both at the same time, which is really good, her release strategy, and more. This is one of the conversations I come back to over and over again for reflection and learning. So take notes, as long as you're not driving. The other thing about this interview is that I'm able to think about and re-listen to it with lots of good memories. It was that fun for me. Shannon and her partner Jamie are really sweet people. Jamie's not in this episode, but he is featured in another one, and maybe another one after that with Shannon. And you want to hear something funny, though? Today, as I record this intro, is 4 years to the day that Shannon and I had the following conversation. Here's me talking to Shannon Curtis back in November of 2018. I've not waited for anyone as long as I've waited to talk to you.
Oh, gosh, that's terrible. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, I want you to feel special.
Oh, okay. Well, I feel very special. Thank you very much.
No, I didn't mean to say, oh my God, you made me wait so long. I meant to say, I have been waiting for this interview for weeks and weeks.
That's amazing. Well, thank you for your patience.
Absolutely. So I guess we can talk about at least one of the reasons why it took a little while. You are currently on tour, and I believe it's exclusively a house concert tour. I guess you're on break. You're at home, but please tell my listeners about your current house concert tour.
Yeah, it is almost done. We have 2 more shows in the Pacific Northwest, so that's why I'm home right now, because the final 2 shows are coming up this weekend, and they are within driving distance of my house. But we just arrived home a few days ago after having been on the road for 4 months, driving all over the United States, making stops in people's living rooms, backyards, garages, other creative private spaces to do an exclusively house concert tour.
What was your favorite space, by the way, that you have hit so far? And you can just describe it if you want. You don't have to say where it was, unless you want to.
That's a tough question. It is, well, because, the spaces are also super unique. And, sometimes the space that we envisioned we were going to be in, we have to change plans because of weather or something. Like there was one house in New Jersey, a new host in August, that had set up this beautiful outdoor space. They had strung market lights between these really old growth evergreen trees in their backyard. And somebody had been taking care of the lawn really well. It was beautiful back there. And there were big thunderstorms that day. So we moved into their living room / foyer / dining room area and made it work. So, we have some beautiful spaces and some fun spaces, but it's really hard to pick like a favorite based on that. I mean, because honestly, no matter whether we're at, on some like stunning piece of property looking over a body of water, or we're in somebody's garage, really what's meaningful and special about these events is the interaction with people. And for me, that always trumps, the scenery, the backdrop, the surroundings. It's always about getting to meet people, getting to interact with them, getting to share with them an experience around music that is intimate and connective and meaningful.
What's the most unusual space you've done a house concert in?
Well, we had an unusual one last week. A woman who has hosted us before in her home recently acquired a new business. She's now a shop owner, a consignment shop owner in the Portland area. And so we actually did the house concert in her new shop, which is fun. She closed early for the day and cleared some of the clothing racks off to the side. And we actually placed like a shelf of shoes for sale right behind me where I was set up to play. And it was really quite fun. It was neat. It was a good atmosphere.
Almost a theatrical backdrop.
Yeah, totally. You can embrace wherever you are,
I know it's obvious between you and I, but for those listening, one of the first things that really interested me about you was that, well, let's see, I was going to mention your book first, but it was the fact that you had this focus on house concerts, and to the extent that you have written a book or wrote a book and have since revised it, and it'll be in the show notes, but it's No Booker, No Bouncer, No Bartender, How I Made $25K on a 2-month house concert tour, and how you can too. I've had, I don't know if you know who Amy Killingsworth is, of Amy and Gary's house concerts in San Antonio, Texas. She's been on the podcast. A guy named Tom Meany, who was on the podcast before Amy Killingsworth, mentioned her and mentioned house concerts in our conversation, and suddenly he was just advocating them. He wanted, he said, I kind of see myself as a self-appointed ambassador for house concerts, and here's why they're so cool. And I guess around that time I found you. He might have even mentioned you, and you've been mentioned in no less than a half a dozen episodes because of it. And yeah, right. And I even did one episode, mostly because I was in a pinch and didn't have a guest that week, but I've been thinking ahead about I could do this solo episode on house concerts. So I talked about tapping into the scene largely based on things I'd read in your book and from talking to other artists and making some observations. So how long have house concerts been your thing? It seems to be, you record a lot of music. You seem to be creative outside of music too, but so you do a lot of stuff. But how long have house concerts been such a big part of what you do?
Yeah, so it started in 2011. I had been working as a solo artist for a number of years prior to that, doing trying to do the traditional thing where I booked myself in small venues, coffee houses, listening rooms, and I would drive laps around the country in my Volkswagen Jetta, playing at these places. I also did a bunch of college shows at that time, and actually those were typically more well-paying. So I sort of like funded my touring off of the backs of those college shows. So really tried to get out there and try to build audiences in cities all over the country, in the traditional venues. And it was really a slog, I was driving a lot, playing for rooms with but not very many people, but, getting a few names on my list here and, each night, and selling a couple of EPs, each night. And, but it was it was growing, but slowly. And that's all I knew that's all I knew what to do at that time. But then in 2011, I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and I received an email in the summer of 2011 from a woman who had been to some of my shows in San Diego. And she's like, "Hey, you haven't been to San Diego in a while. You should come down here. You could play in my living room, and I'll invite my friends, and we'll take donations for the show. What do you think?" So I thought, well, that sounds odd, but interesting. And certainly we'll at least make our gas money driving down to San Diego from LA. So let's go check it out and see what this is all about. And so we went down there, and we had this just like transformatively wonderful time. I played in this living room with about 20 people gathered around on sofas and on the floor and in chairs. And it was just every bit of what, all of the reasons why I do music and wanting to make a connection with people and really have an experience around music was present at this house concert. There was not the latte maker going off at the wrong moment, or, people being noisy at the bar while I was trying to, play my most sensitive, moment of the most sensitive song. It was super connective. We shared a moment that I could see when people were having an emotional reaction. We shared laughter, we shared tears together. It was so powerful. And to our great delight, at the end of the night, we made a lot more than our gas money. And so that was sort of when the light bulb went off. And by the way, when I say we in these conversations, I'm always referring to me and my husband, Jamie Hill, who is my partner in crime. And he's a record producer and engineer. He is also my partner in all things that I do as well. So that's the we. When you hear me say we from now on, a key to the episode. So anyway, we made more than gas money. And so that's what the light bulb went off for us at that moment. We had really, at that time, scheduled about 5 months out of some pretty hardcore club touring on the West Coast. We were trying to put me in 5 West Coast cities once a month. So to play these markets as though I were local for 5 months in a row, to see if we could really just generate some kind of momentum in those cities in terms of following. But those shows were kind of spread out because we were trying to play mostly weekends if we could. And so we had all these, empty dates on the tour. We we decided we could maybe put the word out to my newsletter list to see if anybody wanted to host house concerts as filler dates on these club tours. And it was after that 5 months were over that we looked back at the history of that time and realized that on every metric that we could measure, both objectively and subjectively, the house concerts were outperforming the club shows entirely, like on every metric. The money we were making, the enjoyment we had, the CDs we were selling, names on the mailing list, engagement from people, social media engagement after the fact, like on everything, the house concerts were doing better. And so it was on our way back down to LA for one of those trips that Jamie actually was like, what if we tried to do a tour of only house concerts? And that's kind of when it all started. So we did our first house concert tour in 2012. And we've been doing one every year since then. So this was our 7th year. Is that right? 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Yeah. This is our seventh tour of house concerts. About one year into that, we we just completely abandoned the club shows altogether. Like I just stopped looking for bookings at club shows. I stopped putting any energy toward that because each year we went out and did this house concert tour, it was growing and it was doing the kind of building that I'd hoped would happen in the venues. We were actually building community around what I do, around what we do. And we were starting to see the fruit of that growth. So for the last, I've been doing house concert tours for the last 7 years, for probably about the last 6. I haven't played in any sort of traditional venue, with the exception of a couple of theater shows that I was invited to open for a Grammy winner. So when someone asked me to do something like that, I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I would like to go play for 1,000 people opening for Sean Colvin. Those were the only exceptions to that rule. Otherwise it's been entirely house concerts for the last 6 years.
And just opening for Sean Colvin sounds like a worthy break from the house concert scene.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the crossover for that is that when people show up to a theater to see a show, they're there to engage with the music, And so actually the first time I've actually opened for her 3 times, but the first time I was a little nervous. I'm like, I'm used to doing these intimate house concert shows where people are just we're all in it together. And what's this theater going to feel like? And it turns out that in a theater show, it really feels like a super large living room. Like people are there to engage. They're there to be with each other and be with the artist. It's not music happening in the corner of the room while other things are also happening in the space, So yeah, it was just like a big living room. That's all.
The theater shows, are they more highly produced in terms of, do you use backing tracks? Do you use other musicians for those?
No, I played solo. I perform the exact same way that I do in people's homes. We do, when we do house concerts, we do bring a fairly surprising level of a tech
gear.
Experience. I guess that's the right gear. Yeah. I play keyboard. That's my instrument.
Mm-hmm.
And over the last couple of years, I've also learned that I really enjoy storytelling. And so my shows are a mixture of storytelling and songs. And we've also, in the last couple of years, sort of developed this thing that we call immersive storytelling, where there are sound cues that put you in the moment of the story, and sometimes that bleeds into the songs as well. So they're not backing tracks per se, because it's not like music playing behind me. I'm performing all the live music with my keyboard and voice. But we do have some interesting, fun things that we figured out how to bring into the experience that involve other sounds too. So the theater performances were exactly what we do at the house concerts.
Yeah, how nice. At some point, it sounds like in the beginning, you and Jamie figured this out and tried it, just like you were trying to figure out how you could get yourself embedded into a West Coast scene and appear to be local. So then comes the house concert thing, and it sounds like you figured it out in the beginning on your own and have been figuring out more. Did you have any points where there was inspiration, be it from talking to a lot of other artists who were doing the same, talking to house concert venues, or did you have a specific person or a couple of people that were very influential in helping you and Jamie put these types of tours together?
Yeah, I didn't. The only place I had ever heard of house concerts before we started doing them was one of those websites out there that connects artists with house concert venues,
mm-hmm,
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had looked into that briefly. There was this big fee to apply to be part of their list. And then if you got accepted, then you paid another fee to get access to the list of house concert venues. And then if you got that list, then you contact them directly and cross your fingers that they'll book you. And to me, that sounded just like booking in venues. That didn't sound at all like an alternative way, really. Like it seemed like it presented some of the same issues as some of the traditional venues. It didn't sit right with me, and so I didn't go that way. So all the stuff that we've developed and learned has just been about trial and error. it was about going out those first few years. And honestly, we're still learning. Like, I'm going to be revamping our house concert host guide for next year based on a few new things that we learned this year. And we're 7 years in, and we're still learning and tweaking and trying to refine, what we do so that we can do it better. But it was really just about trial and error. And that's why we wrote the book, because after the first couple of years of doing this, I was starting to get emails from artists on social media who were like, hey, I see you're out doing this house concert. How did you do that? And I was like really tired of writing really long emails describing how we did it. And so someone suggested, why don't you put this in a book? And so that's really why the book became a thing. But the big twist in the way that we approach this versus that website that I described, that I had stumbled on a number of years ago, was that we don't do any of our shows with quote unquote people who host house concerts. We do all of our shows with people, regular folks who know and like and support what we do and who want to share it with their communities. So the shows that we do are not, someone who's hosting, 6 shows a year in their home and booking artists to come through. These are just people who've, by and large, never even been to a house concert before, certainly never hosted one before. And they just know who we are, and we present this idea to them like, hey, what if we did this intimate concert in your house with your friends, and partner with them to create that event so that it is a unique event to their communities. And that's really been the power behind what we do, I think, is that it's been a community-driven effort and not us trying to tap into this existing house concert network out there. We've been able to figure out how to leverage our connections, relationships within our community to grow that community through doing them directly with people, as opposed to trying to tap into an existing system, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Connections, relationships within our community to grow that community through doing them directly with people, as opposed to trying to tap into an existing system, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And it appears that from reading a book and just hearing the things that you're telling me now, that when you do the house concert shows, you have much better access to your fans. They have better access to you. So you're building your community, including adding a lot of them to your email list. Can you kind of describe or sum up how or what the impact has been for your email list of people that are genuinely interested in what you do since you took this route?
Yeah, I mean, we get new email signups every single night, and the way that we grow what we do is, people most of our new hosts each year when we go out on tour are people who were guests at a house concert the year before. So, we have some homes that we go back to every year, that it's become sort of a tradition in some families, in some people's homes, like, hey, it's time for the Shannon Curtis house concert this year. And there are some families who've hosted us 7 times, in their house, like they've been with us since the beginning. But most of the new people who host each year are from the population of people who encountered us in their friend's home the year before and who thought, oh, hey, I have a space. I would love to share this with my friends. So that email list is a lifeline for that. We use social media, and we're on there daily, and that's an important way to interact with people. But not everybody's on there. The email list, however, is something that I own 100% of. I own those connections, and so it's been that's been a vital part of staying connected. And I've learned also that I tend to write a lot of times personally in the emails, in the newsletters I send out too. Like it's more than just like news about what's happening, but also sometimes like, hey, here's some stuff that I've been thinking about, or here's my reaction to this thing that's happening in the world. Or here's I give like a summary of the shows that we've done, little meaningful moments that happened at each one. And the feedback I get from people regarding my newsletter list is that people really enjoy hearing just more about those human bits, as opposed to just me like blasting out information like new album, new tour, but actually like using that list as a way to to deepen the connection that we started whenever it was that they got on the list, to actually go and talk about human things. And so that newsletter has been super vital in developing the relationships when we're not face-to-face with people.
Well, I love the way you look at everything that is involved in audience growth and the business of your music. And to me, one of a couple things here, you mentioned, the email list is something you own 100%. And as reminded me of a mentor of mine is always saying, remember that Facebook is rented land and things can change. So, be sure don't build your entire business or following there. But you also say something really beautiful on your website about staying in touch, and that is where you ask people to join your list, and you say, and I quote, "This the best way to support me an independent the best way to support an independent artist like me is to oh my goodness, I am on a coffee-free day today, and
oh no,
I think it's
terrible.
kicking in.
Why would you do that to yourself?
It was really funny. I started this just today. Fast mimicking diet. I'm just kind of want to reboot my system, if you know what I mean. And
it
involved getting off caffeine, and so I tried to wean myself down, but I thought, I didn't give myself enough time, so I think it's starting to hit me now. And I thought, how funny! I'm going to have 2 interviews today. Usually, I'm lucky if I have one, and I'm going to have one of them with Shannon Curtis, who I've been waiting to talk to forever. But apparently this is the hour that it's kicking in. Okay, let me try one more time. The best way to support an independent artist like me is to let me let you know what I'm up to. My community is the foundation of everything I do. I'd love for you to be a part of it. Thank you. And you just ask for the email address. And I love that. I really, really love it. And I love what you said about being able to be more personal and extend the stories of your life and your reactions to things with your fans, because social media is a lot of blurbs and they're useful, but everyone's not there all the time, and sometimes people don't care.
And there's been a lot of people who have been like, this Facebook thing, it's a crap show. I'm out.
Yes.
Because our times are tough. And there's a lot of people who haven't been sticking around on those social media platforms. But the newsletter it is something that will transcend. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when I was trying to connect with people who liked my music on MySpace. And where's that now? These platforms will come and go. I know Facebook seems like it's an institution that will be here forever and ever, amen. But I'm not willing to bank on that, And the community aspect of what you're tapping into, and the I don't know if have you read the updated version of the book, the house concert book? Because there was an initial version that came out and then we did an updated version a year later. And did you get the updated one?
I don't know. I'm going to have to check because I was on the website today and I saw, there's been a revision. I wonder if that's the one I read. But anyway, continue.
Okay. Well, my point was that between writing the first version and the second version, one of the updates, and there's a lot of new information that we put in the updated version, but one of the things that I did is I went back through the first version of the book and I removed every instance where I had used the word fan and replaced it with supporter or members of my community or something that wasn't fan. Because one of the biggest lessons that house concerts have taught me is that there is another way to approach people who may be interested in the music that I make. And this relationship between fan and artist has always felt somewhat artificial to me. It's always felt just an uncomfortable division. And I've never really liked that. But one of the things that I've learned about from doing house concerts is that there is a place in the world and that people have a desire to connect with people who are making music, making art, whatever it is that they want to connect with. And that doesn't have to be this artificially separated fan versus artist thing. It can actually be something based on real relationships and a much more human expression of connection than this artificially separated one that we are taught is what's supposed to happen with people who make music and those who listen to it. But I just reject the notion that that's the way it has to be, that it actually can be real and human and connective in a way that is a two-way street and is not just, a sea of people lauding attention on this one person high up on the stage in the lights. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that. And fan sounds kind of funny and self-adoring, I suppose, in a way. But
doesn't it?
Yeah. And what, from observing your career, those people truly are supporters. Everything you're doing is, you said it at the outset that the tours are supporter-driven. You're not pursuing existing house concert series. You're pursuing people who know and love what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Okay, before time gets away from us, I want to ask you about Both at the Same Time.
Okay, great.
Your latest album
How fun.
And a book. So there's a couple of things. Talk about the book first.
It's the Both at the Same Time book of lyrics and writings. It's obviously the lyrics from the songs on that record. And then just also a collection of essays, you might say, but just, a deeper dive into some deeper meditations on the theme of the record, which is both at the same time. The idea, the theme is every song sort of reflects some experience of holding opposing truths in tension. I tend to write records on themes. Each year that I put out a record, it's usually, sort of like tied together with a theme. So this year's theme is about these duality / non-duality experiences, right? Where you are experiencing the beauty of this world that we live in, and at the same time, you may be feeling, the deep pain that exists here as well, and being able to hold both of those things at the same time. One does not negate the other, but they do exist in conflict with each other. So what do we do when life gives us those opportunities to hold opposing truths in tension? And how do we start to figure out how to do that? Because it can be an uncomfortable place to be, So that's sort of what the album explores, and the book was just, I songwriting is my main jam. Obviously, that's that's my biggest source of creative expression. But the book was an opportunity to kind of provide a little bit more context for where some of the songs came from. I wrote pretty personally about some things from my life, about ways in which I have wrestled with some of those truths in tension over the course of my life. So for people who have gotten the book and read it, they've learned more about me than I've probably ever shared publicly about some things in my life. But it was also pretty liberating to write those things down and send them out into the world. But yeah, it's just a deeper dive. The book is around the material that the record is centered on. And that's the book.
What a cool idea. Does I wanted to ask you about the cover, and I'm thinking, this is not a visual format here, but it'll be in the show notes. But does the cover tie into the theme? I'm sure it does. It's interesting, and I like it, and I don't always ask about covers of albums, but it is kind of interesting.
Oh, I'm so glad you're asking. So the cover does tie into the theme. Do you know what the cover is? Are you able to identify it, or shall I tell you?
No, I don't. I haven't stared at it long enough, perhaps, but no.
It's okay. No, it's okay. I wouldn't expect anyone to know. And very few people, since we've been on tour this year, have been able to independently identify it. So what it is it's a diagram, a scientific diagram of representing the what was called the double slit experiment, which was the experiment that proved that light is both a particle and a wave at the same time.
I should be familiar with it.
So, yeah. I have a science background, so I was a biology major in college before I started doing music, and So I'm a super science nerd, and actually just finished reading this novel that was this wonderful science fiction novel that totally dealt with this idea of quantum physics and superposition, which is something that I've talked about in the show. There's a song on the record that sort of deals with this idea of both at the same timeness in terms of quantum physics. So I'm a geek for this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But that experiment, prior to this experiment, for a long time, scientists believed that light was emitted as waves. And Isaac Newton was actually the first person who suggested that light was actually a particle. And that was very difficult for scientists to wrap their brains around because waves and particles are very different entities. And then this double slit experiment is the thing that proved that light exists as both a particle and a wave at the same time. And so it was just a fun, quirky, nerdy, scientific representation of both at the same timeness that we chose for the album artwork.
Well, I'm glad I asked. I've probably seen the image before, but when I saw it, I'm like, oh, that looks really cool. And I tried for a few seconds, to figure out what it was. I wasn't sure, and it fits into the theme very nicely.
Yeah, you'd have to dig back into like high school physics probably to remember that image.
Yeah. The other question about the album I had may have to do with marketing, business model, and that is that when I look at it on Spotify, I don't see this a lot, but I doubt it was the first time, and it looks akin to something I've seen on iTunes. So when I look at the album on Spotify, I can play a couple songs, and then the others I cannot, but I can certainly go buy them all, I presume on iTunes or on your website. Was there a bit? Yeah, was there a bit? Were you taking the kind of iTunes teaser strategy there? And
yeah, it's a windowing strategy, right? We learned a couple of years ago when we first started putting records on Spotify, and then we'd go on tour, and especially with younger crowds, people would come up to the pop-up store after the show where we had our CDs and our digital download cards and T-shirts and whatnot, available vinyl as well. But people would come up to the table and be like, "Oh my gosh, that was so great! I loved the new music. Is it on Spotify?" And we'd say, "Yeah," and they'd be like, "Awesome, thanks." And they'd turn around and walk away from the store. And, we realized that when we're on tour that a good, half of our income each night at the shows are from merch sales. Mm-hmm. And so that was just a windowing strategy that we adopted so that while we're on tour, this is the first year that we put 3 songs up on Spotify to begin with. I think last year we just had the single available on Spotify while we were on tour. And then we do a full streaming release once the tour is over. So within a few weeks or so, you'll be able to play the whole record on Spotify. But until then, we encourage people to buy it because it's an important way that people can sustain and support the work that we do.
Cool. I like it. And I assumed as much. It's nice to hear you articulate the method behind the madness, as it were.
Well, and it's also a great opportunity at the pop-up store. We've learned to help educate listeners about how this all works.
Yeah.
People will often ask us, "Oh, you guys get paid from Spotify, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, the amount of money I've gotten from Spotify streams might buy me a sandwich." It's not that much. It's a great opportunity to educate people who don't otherwise have a reason to know that streaming income is abysmally small especially for independent artists, people who are not affiliated with labels who, I understand that labels are making great money from streaming, but that's not translating to the little guys like us.
Speaking of which, are you encouraged at all by the new bill that was signed for artists in this to help deal with this?
I think so. I mean, I don't know that it's going to make any sort of a fundamental difference in my life, but it's certainly a move in the right direction. So yeah, it's encouraging. I think there's a lot more work to be done. And in the meantime, honestly, I don't fret too much about that kind of stuff. I mean, we do have this windowing strategy with streaming because we've noticed how that actually makes an impact on our income when we're on tour. But other than that, I don't really spend a whole lot of time fretting over low streaming rates because it's so largely out of my control, And so honestly, like with everything, there's so much about the quote unquote music industry that is out of my control, and so what I think one of the biggest lessons that I've learned in the course of doing these house concerts and sort of shifting my thinking from an industry focused path to a community driven path is that there's a space for me to create the career that I want to have outside of other people's rules. So there's a space to occupy where we can go and share the work that we're creating with people in a way that's meaningful to them. And there are people who want to support that kind of work in the world. So I don't spend a whole lot of time fretting about the stuff that's out of my control. I've learned that there's this whole other world that I can spend my energy on in building community around what I'm doing. And so that's really where I spend most of my time focusing my efforts and my energy.
Sounds pretty wise. Personal songs are also part of that. You didn't use the word ecosystem. I'll just throw it out there. Part of the ecosystem that you're building for your career, and it looks like a pretty thriving part. Does it tend to work as part of the ecosystem as house concerts do, or is it almost as a bit of an ecosystem in and of itself for personal songs?
I think it's very much part of the same ecosystem in that it's a very personal experience, right? Like when I'm writing a song for somebody, and for listeners who aren't aware of what a personal song is, this is where people hire me to write a song about their life or for somebody that they love. Oftentimes people are using these as unique gift items for people in their lives. I send interview questions to people to get them writing about the situation or whomever the song is going to be for. And then from their words, I draw the theme and the lyrics for the song, and I write and record an original song for them. So the process for that is very one-on-one. It's all about connecting on a one-on-one, in a one-on-one relationship with another person, listening to their story in an empathetic way such that I can then write a song that reflects their heart. I mean, it is sort of like the apex experience in terms of going deep and personal with people, right? If that's sort of the theme of how my career runs, then this is definitely the deepest dive into that experience. And I've been performing a personal song that I wrote for somebody a couple of years ago on our tour this summer, and so it gives me an opportunity to talk about what personal songs are from the set that I'm doing, each night. And then we have a little flyer at the pop-up store that gives more information for anyone who's interested. And so it's another way for people to hear how I've done this for other folks. And then if they decide that's something they want to do, they can engage further with me on that. It's just a great way to go deep.
And it sounds like from, business or career perspective that the two facets of your career, personal songs and house concerts, you're very much able to cross-pollinate the two then, so that they help each other.
Absolutely.
That's very cool. Shannon, I know that you have another engagement this afternoon, so I want to be respectful of your time.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I know that people can find you probably best by starting at shannoncurtis.net. I believe from there they can find all the spokes that take them to all the place on the socials all the places that they'd want to go. Is that right?
That is absolutely right. Yes.
Well, cool.
Yes, I would love to see you there.
I am going to find out if I got that second edition or not. I tried to look on my Kindle while we were talking, but I think I need to go on to the laptop and look it up and see. And if not, I'm going to order it. It was a nice, informative read.
Well, I think that maybe I could be wrong, but I think that if you purchased the original, that perhaps the updated version, I don't think you have to pay again for it. I think it's maybe a free upgrade. I'm not sure. I think that's the case.
Wouldn't that be sweet? Well,
I think that might be the case. Yeah.
Yes, and it wasn't, as I recall, it wasn't a budget breaker to buy it. So
no.
if you're listening to this and we piqued your curiosity, you should check out Shannon's work and her book. It's on Amazon and probably all the other cool places that you can find ebooks. Shannon, it was a pleasure, and I'm definitely going to stay in touch with you, and maybe we can do this again sometime.
I would love that. Thank you so much. Thank you for your patience in actually getting to this interview day. And thank you so much for reaching out. It was a pleasure talking with you.
It was worth the wait. Talk soon. This episode was powered by Bandzoogle, the platform for musicians and bands to build a great website, manage direct-to-fan marketing and sales. Bandzoogle features great design options, a commission-free store to sell music, merch, and tickets, and so much more. Try it free at bandzoogle.com and use the promo code ROBONZO, ROBONZO, to get 15% off your first year. And I'll put a link to all that in the show notes, of course. If you love what I do, if you find value in what I do here on the podcast, please visit unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor or the show notes for this episode to learn about options for offering your support. The Unstarving Musician accepts direct financial support, and we very much appreciate it, but there are several other ways to support the podcast and help keep it going. Again, you can learn more about those options for supporting the Unstarving Musician podcast at unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor. Please help others find the Unstarving Musician podcast by following or subscribing on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. It really does help. And if you have feedback, please go to unstarvingmusician.com to get all my contact info. You can text me, call me, email me, leave a voice message right there on that page. Just go down to the bottom of the page and you'll find everything you need to know. I really would love to hear any of your comments, suggestions, questions, whatever you've got. And you can find links to just about everything talked about in this episode at unstarvingmusician.com/podcast. All right, I'm peacing out. Thank you for listening and sharing with your musician friends and fellow indie music bands. Peace, gratitude, and a whole lot of love.